Danielle, now that you've taught the lesson and I reviewed it and gathered your data, how do you feel that the lesson went?
I feel the lesson went well. She was able to, first we reviewed some of the words that we learned in the book the previous day, such as prey, endangered. So she was able to actually tell me what those words were before we even started the lesson. So I thought that actually went well. Also felt like I went over parts of the QRA strategy with her. She was able to give me some answer questions and identify. She was able to answer and identify questions from the story that were in the book questions. We briefly went over questions that were in your head, which was on your own. We didn't do the whole full four questions for the QAR, but she was able to go back and reference those in the lesson. Okay. So I thought that was successful.
Okay, so you went over, and I saw that you went over the words and the beginning of the in the beginning of the lesson. And when you went over the words in the beginning of the lesson, you had the student, if you looked at the data, what were you really looking for the student to perform, or what task were you looking for the student to?
I think I just wanted her to refresh her memory and kind of activate her prior knowledge of those things. I knew we had read this part of the story before, so I knew she was kind of familiar with those words, but I wanted to reinforce that she had some type of understanding of those words from the first time, and then those would jog her memory and probably have her thinking about what we were going to read that day.
Okay, so if I'm hearing you correctly, you were looking to review from the day before?
Right.
Okay. And I saw in the data that you asked her to review. In fact, you had her recall some of the facts from the story along with the definitions.
Right.
Okay. Recorded. If you go back to our pre-conference, do you remember what the overall goal of the lesson was?
Yeah, my goal was to have her use comprehension strategies such as the QAR to construct meaning of the text. I wanted her to get a deep understanding. We were reading about jaguars, on some of the facts about jaguars, and how their habitat, what they like to eat, some of their predators or prey. So she had a well understanding of the story.
Okay.
And I wanted her to use inferencing more so, like in her head, critical thinking. I actually worked on that the next day as well, because I feel as though, like, even with the testing that we did in the beginning of tutoring, she doesn't do well with inferring. Like, she does well with right there in your head type of questions, but it takes a lot for her to think and search. So a lot of them, I had her go back to the book and think and search about it, search for the answer, and then give me a critical thinking response.
Okay, so what I'm hearing you saying is that inferencing seems to be the main skill that you want her to work on in the QRA strategy. So you really want to focus on the inferencing, although you're working on the whole QRA strategy. Okay, and I also heard you say earlier that in this lesson you only reached part of the QRI, and the lesson that I looked at, and I saw some of that when we looked over your data. And if we looked at your data that we went over, and the types of questions that you asked, well, if we look at the questions that you asked when you asked them, you asked about, I noticed you asked about jaguars, and you asked about them twice in the reading that you stopped, that I heard. So you had her read, and then twice you asked about questions. Can you talk a little bit about that and what maybe your decision was and the questions that you asked?
Yeah, I was asking like little, what I did was I have her read a little portion of the text, and then I would ask her the question. For instance, do jaguars like to swim was one of the questions I think I asked her, and she was able to say that they do like to swim by actually looking back in the text and remembering what she read. Then I had her actually post it on the chart. That was a, or no, I actually didn't have a personal chart. I had her tell me that it was in your head. I mean, in the text question. So the reason why I was doing that with her was because I wanted her to realize what she was looking for. Like, if that's something that's right there in the text, or is it something I have to think about for a little bit and inference. So that's why I was having her do that and go back and forth like that, because if she ever has to read text on her own, or this is something that she's not understanding, she can ask these questions to help her understand the text or comprehend the text.
Okay, so you were looking to see that was an actual in the text question. Okay. And then you asked her about why jaguars were extinct. Was that also an in the text question?
It actually was a think and search type of a question, because they talked about it, but they didn't give specifics. So she actually had to tell me at that point, like, why were they extinct, or why did she think that? So it was kind of like on your own type of a question. And then I know I did some questions that were like kind of outside of the book of thinking your own, or maybe an author question. Like, we compared the jaguars between a whale. I don't know if that was on there, but we compared those two as well. So she was able to now think of a compare and contrast, almost like a Venn diagram. We're talking back and forth about it to another book.
To a whale. Okay. Compared the jaguars to a whale, and that was
kind of a compare and contrast that I had her use to help her relate books, like kind of connect our books that we've been reading.
And you connected that to the text, which allowed you then an example of all 4 of the types of questions that you were trying to reach. Okay, very good. I'd like to take a look at your assessment at the end, if you would. And then you were trying to reach, and you had illustrations, and you had talked in the pre-conference about how your illustrations were going to show that she knew the different, she showed your objective, and she knew the different types of questions and inferences. And I really like the idea of the illustrations showing and representing. I think that's a great idea. And if we looked here and we saw jaguars love to swim, and they're extinct, and people try to save them, and then the whole idea of Mr. Childs, you have everything. Well, if you look, did you have everything, I should say, in represented that you talked about? And could you maybe elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, like, I know she likes to draw. I tried to make it as fun as possible for her. We did actually write some facts as well. So I had her write and I had her draw. So she was able to give me 3 facts that she learned about the story. I thought the logo chart was a good way to assess, because it tells me exactly that she's actually understood the story. So I did, actually this is probably supposed to be they're almost extinct. This probably should be in danger. But anyway, she did get the point that they, love to swim, unlike other cats, because we talked about, along as we were reading, we were talking about how lions don't like the water, and some other animals don't like the water. Big cats like the water, even house cats. So this was interesting to her, because, most cats don't like to swim. And then she was saying that they were, she didn't put that, but I think she was trying to say they were like endangered, and people were trying to save them. And the guy in the story, Mr. Childs, was talking about how he's seen a jaguar in his backyard, and he was able to call and figure out how to save these type of animals. So she was able to draw Mr. Childs. So I just had her actually have a picture of what she had just learned. Kind of, I think a visual way of her representing was nice, because that's what, kind of make it fun for her a little bit.
Mm-hmm. And the visual way is nice, and it does show the facts of the stories. If you were taking this and having her show you the QRA strategy of, right here in the text and there, how could you change this to make sure that she understood the strategy?
I think I could have her actually maybe before reading, I could have her answer some questions to see if she knew what they were without reading it, without waiting to read it. Or ask her questions based upon her drawing and see if she was able to connect it back to the QRA.
Mm-hmm. And that would be an idea, to have her explain. So you would ask her questions and actually ask her to explain.
Right.
Now, if you were assessing her, would you record that?
Yeah, I probably would record that.
Okay, as part of your assessment.
Mm-hmm.
I think that would be, a great idea. And then that would take this and make sure that, and that gives the student a chance to, as you said, explain and communicate the strategy with you. And that also enhances your understanding, that she understands, and opens up that line of communication and discussion. So I think that would be a great idea. Okay. Anything else that I need to do?
No, I think it went well.
Okay.